Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show news update. Today is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, and here are the top stories that we're working on for you today.
I have a school for teenager and kids. 70 bullets means 70 body.
You're the second largest country in the world with a 40 million population, million population. I mean, you need at least about 100 million population.
The federal government has now granted Aboriginal title over all of the Lower Mainland to the Musqueam Indian Band.
Provincial government was not briefed at the political level on this. I can't say whether or not at this stage whether any public service members had line of sight to it. I certainly didn't.
I don't know what the ultimate end game here is for the federal government or the provincial government, what they're trying to do to our economy, but doing secret agreements does absolutely no good for reconciliation or our economy, and I stand by that.
And today's episode is brought to us by Berna, but more on them a little bit later. So unbelievable news and just series of events happening as we covered in the show yesterday. Unbelievable weekend with President Trump unleashing Operation Epic Fury and toppling the Iranian regime. The worst regime on planet Earth is now gone. We should all breathe a sigh of relief and thank the Americans and the joint Israeli-American forces for initiating this. Obviously, we've seen Persians celebrating all over the world, and the celebrations did continue. Really awesome scenes out of Los Angeles and Beverly Hills yesterday. The party continues for Persians, just happy about this. Not all news is good, though, in the Western world, specifically in Toronto, where we have seen an onslaught of terrorism aimed at Jewish Canadians. For some reason, the crazy, deranged, pro-regime thugs who managed to get their way into Toronto are taking it out on Jews and synagogues, as well as Iranian Persian activists. So around 10:49 p.m. local time in Toronto yesterday, police responded in a very nice area, upscale area, talking about Old Colony Road and Bayview, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Canada. But there's clear evidence of shots fired into a synagogue. The hate crimes unit is investigating with no motive or suspect identified. Well, I can tell you what I think the motive probably is. But yes, the Jewish synagogues being shot up. A rabbi posted this on X. He said, "Dear Mark Carney, last night military-grade weapons were used against Temple Emmanuel in Toronto. I was told with high confidence these were IRGC operatives that did that." Yes, IRGC, the terrorist group, the part of the Iranian army that apparently operates in Canada. This is the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, the militia for the Ayatollah that's been wiped out. Well, apparently they are operating in Toronto. Toronto police have proven without any doubt their inability to protect Toronto's Jewish community. It's time to deploy military and federal resources to defend Canadian Jews. This is again from Rabbi Pupke on X. Wasn't just him. Ezra Levant, founder and journalist over at The Rebel, wrote this on X. Mass immigration has brought hundreds of thousands of third world Jew haters into Canada. The attack was likely done by Iranian sleeper cells operating in Canada. There are 700 of them, and he links to this global news story. Mark Carney won't stop it. He wants the anti-Semitic vote, and he links to this City Toronto news story saying 2 North York synagogues were struck by gunfire overnight. We looked into it, and I think only one of them has been confirmed to have been shot up. The other one apparently was shot up back in November. But really unbelievable stuff. This is on top of what we reported yesterday. Joe Warrington over in the Toronto Sun writing about this. Iran's activist gym shot up hours after Ayatollah's demand. So Salar Gholami, a Canadian cruiserweight champion who grew up in Iran and runs the Siloan Boxing Club in York Region up in Richmond Hill, recorded a video showing the front entrance of his gym on Yonge Street in Richmond Hill being shot up with numerous rounds. Here is a clip. Actually, to my surprise, the CBC actually covered this and actually showed what Iranian thugs in Toronto are doing. Let's play this CBC clip.
I have a school for teenager and kids. 70 bullets means 70 body.
Unbelievable stuff, folks. 70 gunshots, 17 rounds, 70 bullets shot through a gym, obviously trying to intimidate people for standing up and using it. You know, this is Canada. You have the right to free speech without intimidation. This is what happens when you have just totally unvetted immigration. You let in the good guys with the bad guys, right? The Persians and the Iranians in Toronto should be the dissidents, should be the ones that fled the regime and hate the regime. Why do we have pro-regime thugs in Toronto? Great question. And it continues because we learned that there are planned celebration of life memorials for the Marxist-Islamist terrorist dictator Ayatollah Khamenei, the one that was killed in the strikes on Saturday. Khamenei is dead. And so what do we see? Several Islamic centers giving celebrations of life, like hosting memorials for the Marxist terrorist Islamist dictator. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that if you're memorializing the death of one of the worst dictators in planet Earth, you shouldn't be allowed in Canada. You should not be Canadian. You need to go. You need to go ASAP. Melanie Bennett of Juno News reporting this and posting it on X, asking Patrick Brown, the mayor of Brampton, why is this allowed to happen in his city, in Brampton? Pointing out again that the IRGC is listed as a terrorist entity in Canada. And another user on X, Israel Now, writes this: the Musqueam Islamic Center in Brampton, Ontario is having a service to support Khamenei / Hitler, he calls him. This is very dangerous. The Islamic Center receives funding from the government of Canada because, of course, they do. Okay, guys, let's be real. Crime is up. Repeat offenders are released on bail. Police responses are slower than ever. And in many places, law-abiding citizens are expected to just hope nothing bad happens. That's not good enough. And that's why I'm very pleased today to be telling you about Berna. And I'm so pleased to have this partnership with Juno News because I actually own one myself. I bought one before we ever had this deal with Berna. So what is Berna? It is a non-lethal self-defense launcher that gives you real protection without carrying a firearm. It looks like a firearm. It kind of feels like a firearm, but it's not. It's non-lethal. So Berna launchers look and feel like a real handgun, but they don't use bullets. Instead, they fire powerful kinetic rounds designed to stop a threat from a distance up to 60 feet without lethal force. Here's why it matters. You don't need a firearms license. You don't need a background check. There's no waiting period. There's no permanent life-altering consequences if you're forced into the situation where you have to defend yourself. And let me just tell you, folks, it's all too real. It's all too normal in Canada. We see stories all the time in the news of home invasions and criminal gangs. And it's scary. And many times it's too close for comfort. Again, that's why I bought one myself. These things are designed to stop. They're not designed to kill. They are a less lethal option made specifically for Canada. So this product is legal in all 10 provinces and it ships for free. I ordered one of these things to my farm in Ontario. It came just a few days later and instantly it gave me peace of mind and real protection for women, for parents, for seniors, for anyone who doesn't want to have a lethal weapon in their home or at their easy disposal. Berna hits a sweet spot. It has serious stopping power without the deadly risk. Berna is trusted by civilians, security professionals, and people who simply want a reliable way to protect themselves and their families without having to have lethal force in the house. Look, personal safety isn't about politics. So if you're looking for a practical, legal, non-lethal way to defend yourself and your family, I strongly recommend checking out Berna. Go to the description in the link below or visit junomarketplace.com/Berna. That's JUNO marketplace.com/BYRNA. Guys, buy one for your wife. You'll thank me later. She'll thank you later. It's a really important tool to have in your house, especially for me. Look, my husband travels a lot for work. I have 4 little kids, and this thing, having it in my house gives me peace of mind. So use the link in the description or visit junomarketplace.com/Berna for special offers. Make sure that you're prepared. It's better to be safe than sorry. Okay, moving on. While all of this excitement is happening in the Middle East and across North America, we also have our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, spending some time in India this week. And I guess he's out there again making the case that Canada needs to pivot away from America and find new trading partners and new strategic allies. So he's out there. At the same time, the Indian High Commissioner was on CBC calling for Canada to increase its population to 100 million. The radical far-left initiative from the Century Initiative, saying that in order for Canada to be independent and geopolitically important, we should artificially grow our population to 100 million. 100 million. Okay, let me just back up a little. Canada's current population is just above 40 million. I remember when I was growing up and when I was in high school, it was 30 million. Canada was a better country at 30 million 20 years ago than it is at 40 million. I can't imagine how unrecognizable our country would look like if we follow this nonsense, extreme, radical advice to artificially, more than double our population, get it all the way up to 100 million, bring in 60 million Indians? Is that what he's suggesting? Well, here's a High Commissioner calling on Canada to artificially boost our population to 100 million and presumably let in millions and millions of more Indians. Unbelievable.
It's a relationship of two countries which actually are complementary economies. Economies where you have things which we need, we have things which you need. I mean, for example, simple examples. We have, you're a country of, you're the second largest country in the world with a 40 million population, 40 million population. You need at least about 100 million population. You need people to man many of your resources. We have the capacity, we have the intellect, we have the talent, we have the resources. We have not only, we are, even today, our bilateral trade, if you look at it, we are selling more to you than you are selling to us. But you have things which you want to buy. You have oil and gas, you have fertilizer, you have agri-food, you have lumber, you have uranium, you have energy resources, you have critical minerals. I can give you a host list of that. We have high talent discussing at the top level. You have academicians, scientists, engineers, everybody talking to each other.
Right.
Institutions talking to each other. This is a relationship which has a lot to offer to each other. I think both prime ministers recognize that.
Yeah, how about no? Let's not take that advice. Well, Mark Carney himself says a partnership with India will deepen the ties, and he's looking for 13 new strategic partnerships with universities, calling Canada and India one family. Okay.
The greatest, most enduring strengths between Canada and India are the families who call our nations home. Nearly 2 million Canadians trace their roots to India, including leaders in business, science, culture, and government. Tens of thousands of people travel between our countries every year to visit friends and family. 400,000 talented Indians study in Canada. That is twice the number in the United States. It is 4 times the number in the United Kingdom. These students, these connections, deepen our ties. And so we're collaborating to build on those strengths. We've launched the new Canada-India Talent and Innovation Strategy with 13 new partnerships to deepen our ties in education. And this includes collaborations involving McGill, the University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, to work across artificial intelligence, health sciences, and digital architecture.
All right, speaking of India and speaking of people that we don't really want in our country, there was a massive CBSA drug bust announced yesterday. I'm going to read a little bit from this report. CBSA officials at the Blue Water Bridge port of entry seized 111.4 kilograms of cocaine from a commercial truck entering Canada from the United States. The RCMP has charged 2 Canadian residents, not citizens, Canadian residents. Well, Rupa Subramania on X, she wrote this. The CBSA arrested Sarkhan Vir Singh, 29 of Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and Chamar Singh, 25 of Bellevue, Ontario. Let me just give you a little tip there. They're not really from Nova Scotia and Ontario. Let's just put it that way. Back to what Rupa says. She says, like I keep saying, Canada has allowed large-scale migration of individuals from Punjab, India, who are involved in drug trafficking and other criminal activities to fund the Khalistani movement. Not good. Not good when your broken immigration system leads all the news stories on crime and terrorism in our cities. Okay, I want to move on to an absolutely stunning and terrifying news story developing out of Vancouver, as Juno News was first to report that the Canadian government secretly initiated a deal with the Musqueam First Nations, a slow eventual handover of the land that represents most of the Lower Mainland. And I mentioned this on my show yesterday that none of the legacy media was covering. Well, I'm happy to announce that after we covered it first over the weekend, there have been some developments from the legacy media. I'll get to that in a second. First, Vancouver-Colchana MLA Dallas Brody is ringing the alarm bell on this insane federal announcement that will slowly ensure land rights get transferred over to the Musqueam Indian Band. Here is what she posted on X yesterday.
This is a 911, an SOS, a Mayday announcement to my riding of Vancouver-Colchana and all the other ridings that are located within the Lower Mainland. The federal government has now granted Aboriginal title over all of the Lower Mainland to the Musqueam Indian Band. The Musqueam Indian Band has approximately 1,250 members. They have a chief named Wayne Sparrow, and I guess he is now the owner of Aboriginal title over your properties. This announcement has been buried in the mainstream media, but was discovered by Juno News and released on Friday. It's interesting that this was secretly leaked out by the federal government just when things were heating up in the Middle East, and late on a Friday it came out. This is an astounding story. and something that should have all of you waking up and taking notice.
So nice little recognition there that Juno News was the first one to report this. And folks, this is why independent media and independent news is so important. So if you don't already, please head over to Juno News and consider subscribing, become a premium subscriber, help us fund our journalism. We are breaking the stories that force legacy media to follow our lead and cover these important stories. We are the first ones, so often, so many times, the first ones to report on these kinds of stories. And really, we only operate because of our supporters and our viewers and people who are subscribers. So head on over, and viewers of the Candice Malcolm Show get 20% off. So follow the link in the description below, or head over to junonews.com/Candice to redeem that deal. So like I said, I'm happy to report that the National Post and Global News have both now picked up on this story. And the Global News actually obtained a copy of the report. Part of our reporting showed that this report wasn't even public. They didn't release it. They didn't share it anywhere. And they refused to give it over to Juno News. Well, they have given it over to Global News, so you can read the whole report on their website. But they did some extra reporting. They interviewed a law partner who is an expert in Aboriginal law, who basically just says what I say and what Dallas Brody say, saying this is despicable. It does absolutely, doing secret deals does absolutely no good for reconciliation or the economy. It is not good to do this kind of thing in secret, and that's only really the beginning of our concerns. But here is Global News' interview with Thomas Isaac.
Tom Isaac is a former chief treaty negotiator for the province and a leading expert on Aboriginal law.
I don't know what the ultimate end game here is for the federal government or the provincial government, what they're trying to do to our economy, but doing secret agreements does absolutely no good for reconciliation or our economy. And I stand by that.
And it's not just the public that was left out and left in the dark on this. The Premier of British Columbia says that he also was not informed and is not up to date on what happened. So at a press conference in Victoria, Premier David Eby admitted that he wasn't briefed by the feds on the decision to recognize Musqueam title over large parts of the Lower Mainland, including all of Vancouver. Let's play that clip.
To the best of my understanding, the provincial government was not briefed at the political level on this. I can't say whether or not at this stage whether any public service members had line of sight to it. I certainly didn't. But with that said, I'm not surprised that the feds were involved in these conversations. They've been involved with these conversations with Musqueam for a long time. The Sparrow case that found that there were Indigenous fishing rights came from Musqueam. Musqueam has a title claim that's about a decade old that they filed claiming against the federal government. And so engaging in these conversations is entirely appropriate. I think the lesson the federal government is learning over the weekend is that there is a heightened environment for these conversations and these agreements right now, and they have to go above and beyond. Is a lesson that the provincial government is in no position to lecture people on. We're doing our own work to make sure we're bringing people along on this as well. And we'll be engaging with the feds to understand the implications of the decision for the provincial government while recognizing the importance of this work to be done.
And the BC Conservatives are in uproar after Eby says that he was unaware of the agreement. Here is BC Conservative interim leader Trevor Halford questioning the Premier as to how he could be left in the dark over such a big developing news story.
On such an important issue, we are to believe in 12 days that nobody from the provincial government was briefed, was talked to, phone call, email, nothing. We're supposed to believe that they found out about it just like everybody else did.
Well, after that exchange, the Premier's office has now updated their statement and clarified that the Premier actually attended the ceremony where the signing took place. It was not done in secret, says a statement from Eby's office. Wow, what an absolute mess out there. Well, Juno News is doing an open call to BC residents and property owners in the areas affected. So I'm talking about all of Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, North Vancouver, West Vancouver, and parts of Surrey and Delta. If you own a property and are affected by this and you're concerned about Ottawa's recognition of an Indian band, giving them title potentially over the place where you live, please contact Juno News. Tips can be emailed to tips@junonews.com, or there is an anonymous submission by phone line. We want to hear from you folks. We want to continue to report on this. Okay, final story here. This is just one that makes you sad for your country. An Ontario judge says that it's unconstitutional to have a sex registry for pedophiles. Yes, you heard that right. Canada Proud was posting this on social media. Breaking, Justice Darvin Garg of the Ontario Court of Justice has ruled that the sex offender registry for pedophiles, rapists, and other sex criminals is unconstitutional, because remember, it's all about the constitutional protections for criminals over public safety and your and my safety. A Hamilton judge found that the sex registry is unconstitutional. Michelle Mandel wrote about this over in the Toronto Sun earlier in February. Just unbelievable. Thankfully, the lower court's judge does not have authority to strike down Christopher's Law, which is the one that set up this registry, but it does have impact over his jurisdiction. I'll read a little bit from Mandel's article in the Toronto Sun. It's difficult to imagine a decision more out of touch with the public. A Hamilton judge has actually ruled Ontario's sex offender registry violates the rights of convicted sex abusers and is unconstitutional. Thankfully, the lower court judge doesn't have the authority to strike down sections of Christopher's Law. The power belongs only to judges in the Superior Court and above. So Darvin Garg's shocking ruling applies only to the one sex offender who has come before him. It comes at a time when the Ford government has been musing about expanding the registry to allow some public access. Currently, only trained officers can access the data. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is something that should outrage all Canadians, and we really need to take control of our courts. There are just too many radical liberals. Apparently, this guy was a conservative appointee. Unconscionable how he could rule that way. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Candice Malcolm. This is Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you, and God bless.